The rule of 3 circles. Master your mind in 5 minutes. Imagine if you could solve 90% of your mental problems with a simple technique that takes only 5 minutes to learn. A technique so powerful that was created over 2,000 years ago by a philosopher who went from slave to teacher of Rome's most powerful men. This technique saved emperors from mental crises, helped soldiers find peace amid war, and today can completely transform how you deal with anxiety, frustration, and stress. In the next few minutes, you will discover the secret of the 3 circles, a mental tool that Epictetus, the slave philosopher, considered the key to true freedom. By the end of this video, you'll never see your problems the same way again. The story of the man who discovered mental freedom. Epictetus was born a slave in ancient Rome. From childhood, he knew what it meant to have no control over his own life. His days, his activities, even his own body. Everything belonged to another man. But while he was physically chained, his mind began an extraordinary journey toward freedom. During years of servitude, Epictetus observed something fascinating. While he, a slave, found moments of deep peace, his masters, free, rich, and powerful men, lived tormented by constant anxieties, fears, and frustrations. How was this possible? The answer came through a revolutionary discovery. Epictetus realized there's a fundamental difference between external freedom and internal freedom, and that internal freedom depends on a very specific understanding of 3 types of reality that surround us. The moment of revelation. One night, while observing his masters nervously discussing Roman politics, distant wars, and intrigues they couldn't control, Epictetus had his great revelation. He saw that the human mind wastes an absurd amount of energy worrying about the wrong things. It was then that he developed what we now call the rule of 3 circles, one of the most powerful mental tools ever created. This technique not only freed Epictetus from mental prison, even while he remained physically enslaved, but also became the foundation of all modern Stoic philosophy. The 3 circles of existence. Imagine 3 concentric circles drawn in front of you. Each circle represents a different category of experiences in your life. Epictetus' genius was realizing that all unnecessary mental suffering comes from confusion between these 3 circles. The first circle, the innermost one, is small but extremely powerful. The second circle is larger, more complex, and requires different strategies. The third circle is the largest of all, and this is exactly where most people lose their mental and emotional energy. The difference between a person who masters their mind and a person who is enslaved by their worries lies in clarity about these 3 circles. Let's unveil each one of them. The first circle, your absolute domain. The innermost circle represents everything that is completely under your control. This is your realm of absolute power, where you are sovereign and where your decisions have direct and immediate impact. But here's the first surprise. This circle is much smaller than most people imagine. In fact, it contains only 4 elements: your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, and your actions. Stop and think about this for a moment. Of everything that exists in the universe, of all the complex variables that affect your life, only these 4 elements are truly, completely under your direct control. Your thoughts, you can choose what to focus your mind on. Your emotions, you can decide how to respond to feelings that arise. Your decisions, you can evaluate options and choose a path. Your actions, you can move your body and execute specific behaviors. The revelation of internal power. Epictetus discovered something extraordinary. When you concentrate 100% of your mental energy on this first circle, your ability to influence the other circles increases dramatically. It's as if you were building an internal fortress that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Think of someone you admire for their serenity and effectiveness. This person probably possesses crystal clear clarity about what they can and cannot control. They don't waste mental energy on what's outside the first circle. A practical example. Imagine you're stuck in traffic and will be late for an important meeting. Most people would focus on what they can't control, the traffic, time, the meeting that has already started. But someone who masters the first circle would focus only on what they can control, how to use this time to prepare better, what message to send and notify about the delay, how to arrive calmer and more focused when they finally get there. The second circle, your zone of influence. The second circle is fascinating and more complex. It represents everything you can influence, but not completely control. This is the realm of probabilities, intelligent strategies, and long-term investments. Here are things like your health. You can influence through exercise and diet, but not completely control. Your relationships. You can influence through your attitudes and communication, but not control others' reactions. Your career. You can influence through your performance and choices, but not control all factors that determine success. The wisdom of the second circle lies in understanding that you should invest energy here, but always with detachment from the final result. You do your part with excellence, but don't become enslaved by the need to control the outcome. The second circle strategy. Epictetus taught that the correct approach to the second circle is what we call detached effort. You dedicate yourself intensely to process, but remain internally free regarding results. For example, you want to build a healthy relationship. In the second circle, you can influence this by being a more understanding person, communicating better, showing affection in ways the other person values. But you cannot control whether the other person will reciprocate, if they're going through personal problems, or if you're fundamentally compatible. A person who masters this understanding invests energy in the second circle strategically and intelligently, but doesn't allow their mental peace to depend on controlling these results. They know they did their part, and that's enough to maintain their internal integrity. The third circle, the universe beyond your reach. The third circle is the largest of all and represents everything that is completely outside your control and influence. This circle includes the past, the distant future, other people's decisions, natural events, the global economy, government policies, and millions of other variables. Here's Epictetus' most liberating discovery. 99% of unnecessary mental suffering comes from wasting emotional energy on the third circle. How many hours of your day do you spend worried about things that are in this third circle? Ruminating over past mistakes that cannot be changed? Anxious about a future you cannot guarantee? Irritated by political decisions you cannot influence? Frustrated because other people don't act as you'd like? The invisible mental prison. Most people live in an invisible mental prison, created by the illusion that they can control the third circle. They waste precious mental energy trying to move mountains that cannot be moved, while neglecting the cultivation of the first circle, where their real power resides. Epictetus realized that true freedom comes from radical acceptance, recognizing that the third circle exists, that it will continue to exist, and that your mental peace cannot depend on it. This doesn't mean passivity or resignation. It means strategic clarity. When you stop fighting against what cannot be changed, all your energy becomes available to maximize what you can really control and influence. The practical three circles technique. Now that you understand the theory, let's move to practical application. Here's how to use this tool in daily life. Whenever you feel anxiety, frustration, anger, or any disturbing emotion, ask this question. Which circle contains what bothers me? If it's in the first circle, your thoughts, emotions, decisions, actions, you have direct power to change it. Act immediately. If it's in the second circle, area of influence, ask, what's the best strategy to positively influence the situation? Execute the strategy with excellence, but maintain detachment from the final result. If it's in the third circle, outside your control, consciously recognize this and redirect all your mental energy back to the first circle. Ask, given that this is outside my control, how can I respond in the best possible way? Transformative examples. Let's apply this to real situations. Situation 1. You discover that a co-worker is speaking badly about you to the boss. Circle 3. Don't try to control what the co-worker said in the past. The initial opinion the boss formed, the co-worker's personality. Circle 2. Influence strategically your future reputation through excellent work, an honest conversation with the boss when appropriate, how you relate to the co-worker going forward. Circle 1. Total control your emotional reaction, your thoughts about the situation, your decision not to reciprocate with gossip, your daily professional actions. The 5-minute exercise. Here's a simple exercise you can do right now. Take a sheet of paper and draw 3 concentric circles. In the inner circle, write your current concerns that are in the first circle, things you completely control. In the middle circle, write concerns from the second circle, things you can influence. In the outer circle, write concerns from the third circle, things totally outside your control. Look honestly at this distribution. Where have you been spending most of your mental energy? Most people are shocked to discover that 80% of their worries are in the third circle. Now take all the worries from the third circle and mentally release them. Recognize that they exist, but that they don't deserve your emotional energy. Focus all your attention on the first circle. The path to true freedom. Epictetus promised that anyone who consistently applied the rule of 3 circles would experience a gradual but profound transformation. First, you'll notice moments of greater mental clarity. Then, periods of peace that were previously impossible. Eventually, a fundamental serenity that doesn't depend on external circumstances. This isn't a superficial, positive thinking technique. It's systematic training of the mind to operate according to reality, not illusions of control. We live in an era of information overload and constant worries. Social media bombards us with global problems we cannot solve. 24-hour news keeps us anxious about events we cannot influence. The rule of 3 circles is more relevant today than ever. When Epictetus developed this technique, he couldn't imagine smartphones, internet, or the complexity of modern life. But he understood something timeless about human nature, our tendency to suffer unnecessarily by trying to control the uncontrollable. Here's the most beautiful paradox of this philosophy. When you stop trying to control everything, your real influence increases dramatically. When you focus only on what is truly under your power, you become more effective in all areas of life. People who master this distinction radiate a calm confidence that naturally attracts others. They make better decisions because they're not emotionally disturbed by irrelevant factors. They persevere more easily because they don't waste energy on useless resistance. Finally, I leave you with the same challenge that Epictetus offered to his students. For the next month, consciously practice the rule of 3 circles. Every time you feel emotional disturbance, identify which circle contains a cause and respond appropriately. Keep a simple journal. Write down stressful situations and which circle they fit into. You'll be surprised by the patterns you'll discover about your own mental functioning. This is a practice that can literally change your life, not because it will change your external circumstances, but because it will fundamentally change your relationship with those circumstances. Epictetus went from physical slave to mentally free man, and then taught this freedom to emperors and nobles. He proved that the most real prison is not made of physical chains, but of mental confusion about what we can and cannot control. The rule of 3 circles isn't just a technique. It's a life philosophy that recognizes your true strength and applies it where it can make a real difference. It's the path to serenity that doesn't depend on perfect circumstances, but on clarity about where to invest your limited and precious mental energy. Start today. Draw the circles. Identify your concerns. And experience the freedom that comes from living according to reality, not illusions of total control. This is the wisdom that has crossed millennia to reach you. Use it well.